Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming today, and I'm sorry I'm a little bit late, and we certainly are looking forward to Len Campanaro, who's been here before. This is the 5th time, Len reminds me, in a wonderful series on animals, and today we'll be able to learn about big cats. Welcome, Len.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for reminding me about that, too. Well, it's good to see you all. Thank you for having me back. We're looking at a picture of an Asian rainforest. And we'll spend about half of our time today in Asia on one particular big cat. And then we'll spend the other half out in the African savanna. And between these two locations, we're going to get intimate with cats. In particular, today we're going to talk about tigers and lions. Okay, so I have 2 follow-up slides to start on before we get into cats. At our last session last month, I was asked 2 questions at the end that I couldn't answer. We were talking about Australian animals, and I mentioned about wild dingoes, wild dogs going after kangaroos. And somebody asked me if I could tell them some about dingoes, and I didn't really know dingoes because neither the St. Louis Zoo nor the San Diego Zoo, where I spent so many years, had dingoes. So I put a quick 1 slide together. They're basically a wild dog, feral dog. They're not separate species. They're genetically most closely related to a breed of dog called the singing dog, and they're from New Guinea. It's a medium-sized canine. You can see they're about 35 pounds, 4 feet length overall. Coloration, ginger tan, black or tan, or white. They're really, a slim build. You can even see their ribs. Scientists estimate that they arrived from Pacific Islanders who were explorers 3,500 to 4,000 years ago into Australia. They live in packs, and it's usually a mated pair and their offspring from 1 or 2 seasons. They typically hunt alone, but they can also hunt in packs, and they are territorial. They're opportunistic hunters. They go after whatever they find, but they do like going after large prey like kangaroos. And I told you, if you remember last time, that kangaroos leap into the water and will turn on them in the water and drown them. And they also like to go after water buffalo. I mean, that's a pretty big animal for a 35-pound dog going. They can run 35 miles an hour. While they live all over Australia, they prefer as a habitat areas of open woodland near grasslands, and it gives them probably good camouflage. Life expectancy isn't very long. They only average about 5 years, but their maximum is about 10 years. The second question I couldn't answer, someone wanted to know more about the kangaroo's tail. And they have 20 vertebrae in that tail. Large muscles surround the bones. And they provide not only balance, but also support. If you've ever seen 2 male kangaroos kickboxing, they lean back on that tail for support while they fight each other over who's going to get the female. But most importantly, the tail acts as a 5th leg. It provides more propulsive force than the fore or hind limbs. Typically, they're going to use that if they're jumping less than 15 feet, although they just simply may use their back legs. But when they are going to be going more than 15 to 25 feet, that's when they're using their back legs for propulsion. So hopefully I've answered those 2 questions I couldn't last time. So let's get into cats. And to give it some context, let's talk about cats in general for a moment. Cats share a lot of common characteristics. They all have a round head with small muscles and facial whiskers, have an unbelievable vision span. Well, both humans and cats, our frontal vision is 120 degrees, okay? Something like that. And then we have peripheral vision, which is additional 30 degrees on each side of our head. So we have total vision of about 180 degrees. Well, cats start out at 120. Their peripheral vision is 80 degrees on each side. So they get 280 degrees. It's almost like seeing behind your head. Their eyes also, in the back of the eye, will have a reflective layer of cells which enhances light at night. So their night vision is about 4 times better than ours. Their tongue is like sandpaper. Whether you have a pet cat and it's ever licked you or it's a lion, their tongues feel the same. They have tiny particles of keratin on the surface of the tongue. And that is so when they're eating meat and they're down to just a little bit left on the bone, rather than wearing their teeth on the bone, they can actually lick it off like you took a piece of sandpaper to it and clean the residual off. They all have a sleek body with a sway back posture, and you can see that whether you're looking at the pussycat in the top picture, the leopard in the middle, or the lions in the bottom picture here. Flexible spine, free swinging shoulder blades, legs very muscular, they're good jumpers. Most of them have flexible elbows and wrists. One that doesn't, and we'll be talking about it in a later session, are cheetahs. They don't have flexible wrists, and I'll get into that later then. They walk digitigrade. We walk plantigrade, which is our sole of our foot, as well as our toes down on the ground. Cats are down on their toes. They have a dew claw. Most of them don't use it very much, but cheetahs do. It's very important to them. Most of them have soft foot pads so they can sneak up on prey. Cheetahs don't. And again, cheetahs are kind of a cat of a different need, different structure. And then under their skin, they all look very similar. So if you're looking at their skeletal, it's going to be mostly size is the difference. Okay, a little pop quiz here. Are these cats big cats or small cats? So everybody in the room who thinks a puma is a big cat, please raise your hand. Okay? Well, about half the room thinks a puma is a big cat. How about a lynx? Anybody think a lynx is a big cat? We got one person. How about a Bengal tiger? Yeah, just about have unanimous there. How about that beautiful small clouded leopard? Big cat or a little cat? Big cat? About half the group says big cats. Well, the puma and the lynx are both small cats, even though the puma is larger than leopards. Okay? This clouded leopard is maybe a third of the size of the puma. It's a big cat. And of course, the tiger's a big cat. Now, whether you're a big or small cat doesn't depend on size. It's genetics and certain physical characteristics. Big cats have large fleshy folds in their larynx, which enables them to roar, though there is an exception. Snow leopards can't roar. While small cats, they have small vocal folds in the larynx, so they purr. Big cats lay in their bellies when they want to eat. Small cats, if you notice your house cat, they crouch when they eat. And then the eyes is the real giveaway. Big cats have round pupils, as we see the upper picture is that of a lion. Small cats have vertical pupils, as we see in the pussycat here on the bottom picture. Now, modern cats are classified in taxonomy as Felidae. Scientists trace the origins of cats all back to Asia. So cats are from Asia, migrated around the world, would have crossed the Bering Land Bridge during the height of the Ice Age, which was 1,000 miles wide and dry, coming into North America. In the Americas, that's where canines are from. And they migrated the other way, going into Asia, Europe, and Africa. Okay, so cats are from Asia. Now there's 2 subfamilies of cats. Small cats, called Felidae, and there's some 31 species. And scientists track the history of small cats back a lot further than they do big cats. They track them back over 6 million years, 4.5, 5, 6 million years. Big cats, only 7 species. They don't come on the scene until about 4.5 million years ago. So they show up probably about a million years later. The first one to come on the scene are clouded leopards. They typically date about 4.5 million years. Tigers show up about 3.5 million years ago. And there's 6 remaining subspecies of tigers. Snow leopards show up about 100,000 years ago, and 100,000 years later, so about 3.4 million years. Snow leopards are believed to have diverged genetically from tigers, okay? And while a tiger will readily eat you, snow leopards have no history of going after people. We'll have a session on snow leopards in the future. Lions don't show up till about 2.5 million years ago. Originally 3 species of lions. Today we only have 1 species, the African lion. But amongst African lions there are actually 2 subspecies. All the other leopards, okay, other than clouded leopards and snow leopards, are believed to have diverged from lions, okay? And they diverged about 100,000 years after lions show up, 9 subspecies. Jaguars date back about 2 million years. They're the cat we find here, the big cat we find in the Americas. And then the Sundra clouded leopards are a divergence from the clouded leopard, but these don't come on the scene until about 1.5 million to 2 million years ago. And they're only found on 2 islands of Indonesia, Sumatra and Borneo. What about black panthers? Everybody talks about black panthers. There's no such animal. Okay? It's not a particular species. The term panther is usually referred to as a black cat or a cat of a solid color. The typical black cat that you're going to find that occurs naturally is going to be the jaguar. 25% of all jaguars are black, and it's actually melanistic. They have black spots on black fur. Now, if you saw one for real, you really wouldn't see the brownish that you see in this picture, but I took this picture because I wanted you to be able to see what I'm talking about, of the black spots on the black fur. But if you ever see one in a zoo, we don't have any currently here, you kind of look at them on an angle and you'll actually see those black spots there. Now they occur naturally for the cats that come from the dark, dense section of the Amazon. You don't want to be a bright spot in a dark forest. So that's where you'll find black jaguars. Leopards, about 1-2% of leopards are black. Again, you'll see the black spots on the black fur. That is a genetic anomaly because leopards live in bright open woodland. You don't want to be a dark spot in a bright forest. The prey will see you coming. And then as far as Florida panthers are concerned, they're actually pumas or mountain lions, okay? Mountain lions, pumas, same animal. They covered all of North America at one time. Humans have beat them back that you typically only find them in the western half of North America, down to Mexico and South America. But there was a colony that got isolated down in Florida, okay? And there's only about 50 of those left, and we call them the Florida panther, but they're in actuality a puma. So before we head into our 2 big casts today, one other thing I wanted to mention to you. You know, humans for a lot of years took to feeling like we needed to eliminate predators, but predators are very important to help maintain healthy habitats, and that's important to us as well. You know, a healthy habitat provides, you know, food, water, shelter, space for all the inhabitants, whether you're fish in the stream or, you know, whether you're birds in a tree or Bambi. Predators basically are population control. They keep things in balance so that one species doesn't overgraze to the detriment of others. And we saw that happen when they removed wolves from Yellowstone. The elk population got out of control. They overgrazed. Some animals didn't have food. They actually caused erosion, changed the flow of streams, impacted beavers. It was, you know, messed with Mother Nature. Mother Nature knows better. We as humans need to learn to live with all the species, okay? Yes, species go after, the predators go after prey, but typically they'll go after weak and injured, which basically helps keep healthy genetic bloodlines. And also, they will take some of the young, which keeps the young population from, again, expanding too much. So predators are very important to keeping habitats healthy, and that is good for humans. So don't be so fast to want to get rid of predators. This is Connor. Connor is a Malayan tiger. When I took this picture, he was about 8 or 9 years old, and he's at the San Diego Zoo. And he would have weighed about 325 pounds. He was born at the zoo. So tigers. Originally 9 subspecies, 3 have gone extinct in the last 70 years. You know, people. I've listed the remaining species of tigers, the subspecies of tigers that are left. By the way, let me mention something here. When I use species and subspecies, keep in mind that subspecies, okay, can successfully reproduce. You know, you can take 2 of these different subspecies and they can successfully reproduce. Species cannot reproduce successfully. So, you know, the lion can't successfully reproduce with a tiger, okay? If you remember when I talked about elephants, I told you African and Asian, yeah, they can get together and breed. The offspring is born, I told you that they die within 2 to 10 days, okay? Or maybe you've got a mule and a donkey and a horse breeding, okay? And you will get some of that they'll be sterile. Yeah, they can reproduce, but it's not a complete true success that they can be sustaining. So subspecies is what we're talking about here. So Amur leopards, the biggest of the cats. When I was a kid, I remember them calling them Siberian. Don't call them Siberian anymore because they're extinct in Siberia. They're only found around the Amur River, which is north of North Korea. There's about 450 in the wild. Size-wise, the next one down is the Bengal tiger from India, roughly about 1,800. You can see Indo-Chinese about 250, so that would be Southeast Asia below China. The South China tiger is extinct in the wild. The Chinese actually went on a campaign to eliminate them all. They're only found in Chinese zoos now. Then in Malaysia, you have about 200. And then Sumatra, you have about 400 on the island of Sumatra. So all total, only about 3,000 tigers left in the wild. There's about 2,000 in zoos around the world, 500 in AZA zoos like St. Louis. Okay, we've got 5 here. And then in private commercial, about 4,000. So that's more than zoos and more than in the wild. That's a bad number. I want that number to be 0. And as I go on later in the presentation, you'll find out why I want that number to be 0. Everybody should want that number to be 0. Tigers have lost 93% of their range since the 1880s. Historic range was all across Asia from Turkey to Far East Russia. Their modern range are the 2 red squares you see on the map I've put up here, which is a portion of Southeast Asia and Indochina, and then Russia's Far East. For a habitat, they like swamps, grasslands, tropical or snowy boreal forest, going up as high as 13,000 feet. As long as there's abundant prey and they've got water available to them, they're happy campers. And they try to stay away from humans because they recognize us as their predator. Another pop quiz. How many stripes does a tiger have? And how much does one weigh? Well, the answer is, it depends where you live. They always have a minimum of 100 stripes. In the world of tigers, the closer you live to the equator, the smaller your body size, the more stripes you have, and the darker your fur. That's because you live in a dark, dense rainforest. So you want a small body so you can fit between the trees, and you don't want to be a bright spot in a dark forest. The prey will see you coming. The further north you go, you get into bright open woodland, so you have fewer stripes, lighter coloration, and the bigger your body size, because the further north you go, it starts getting cold. So you want fat on your body to stay warm in the wintertime. So at the bottom end of the scale, you have the Sumatran tiger that lives right down on the equator, roughly 310 pounds for a male. And then Amur tigers, which we have here in St. Louis, over 700 pounds the males can become. Males, no matter what the species is, are typically 30 to 50% larger than the females. And you can see from the picture that they have rather a short neck, massive shoulders and forelegs. Notice the white spots behind the black ears. These are called false eyes. They have two purposes. One, tigers are territorial, so if you see another tiger, you want them out of your territory, you might attack them from behind. But through the dense foliage, they actually look like a pair of eyes staring back, so you're leery about attacking. So it's a bit of a protection. But also, for cubs, it makes them easy to follow their mother through the bush. They have about 30 teeth. They have the largest canines of any cat. The size of the canine in the animal's mouth is about 3 inches or so. And they have far better hearing than we. They can hear at a hearing range both below human hearing range and above human hearing range. They can be active day or night. They do what their prey does, okay? So they depend on the prey, and they adjust to that. They're typically solitary, except for breeding and the female raising her young. So let's talk about the female and their young for a second. Mom, by the time her cubs are about 6 months of age, she's taught them how to hunt. By the time they're a year old, they're accomplished hunters. Mom can't find enough food in any one part of the forest to feed her litter. So at that point, she gets nasty with them and chases them off. And she really has to get nasty because, they're freeloaders. They've enjoyed living at home with Mom and Mom doing all the work. So she chases them off, but they're not fully grown. So the litter stays together for protection because out there, another tiger is going to see them and look at them as competition and attack and kill them and eat them. So the litter stays together until they're about 2 years old. At that point, they're about 90% grown. Now they can't find enough food in any one section of the forest to take care of themselves. That's when they disperse, okay? A female will go out and create a territory, anywhere from 10, 20 square miles or so, depending on prey density, maybe a little bit bigger. And she will not accept another female in her territory. A male will establish a territory that covers 3 or 4 females, and he will not accept another male in his territory. Now, they scent mark their territory. Like a lot of animals, they have scent glands on the head, so they'll rub on trees. They've got it from their toes. They'll lift their tail and spray trees or rocks to mark their territory. And that tells other tigers about them. It conveys their age, their sex, and for females, whether she's an estrus or not. They roar infrequently. Typically, the males like to roar to announce they made a kill. Females tend to only roar when they want to attract an opposite sex because they are an estrus and they want to breed. And then she'll also roar when she's calling the kids to get back. Typically, they're going to walk 10 to 20 miles a day. So when you see the tiger at the zoo walking around, he's doing exactly what he would do in the wild, patrolling his territory, okay? And that's what they're going to do in the wild. They can do a straight up leap from standing still of 20 feet. That's why the walls are so high, okay? A horizontal leap of 32 feet. They run about 35 miles an hour, so you're not going to outrun them, you just outrun whoever you're with, okay? And you'll be safe. They're really strong swimmers. They can swim 5 to 7 miles in a raging river. Stalk and ambush is their method of attack. Their success rate is only roughly 20%, give or take, and it depends on the amount of camouflage they have when they're going after their prey. They typically only are successful in having to kill 1 or 2 times a week. And what they're going to do is, gorge themselves, and often what they'll do is then bury it, either drag it up a tree so that other predators don't get to it, or bury it, and if they don't get another kill later in the week, they'll come back and dig it back up and continue to feast on it. They prefer large herbivores, As you can see in the picture here, deer, water buffalo, and even that water buffalo is several times bigger than the cat. They are very strong in moving it up a tree if they need to. Sometimes they'll go after primates and smaller things, but that's basically if they can't find a big target. Reproduction typically occurs year-round for the different species, except the Amur tiger. They live, it's rather cold. They're living north of North Korea. It gets cold. Animals that live in a more temperate or warmer climate will breed year-round. Those that live in cold climates, typically it's only once a year. For them, it's going to be in the spring. Female is only receptive for about 5 days. She's going to roar to call the male that's in her territory to come to her. She'll do a lot of pacing. She's going to rub her scent over as many things as she can find. And she's going to do a lot, when he shows up, she's going to do a lot of rolling around on her back, which is basically more submissive and saying, yeah, I'm looking to breed. They copulate quite a bit over a 5 to 7 day period, as you can see, anywhere from a few seconds to more than 10 minutes. And it can be rather dangerous, even if it's done in a zoo. Typically, after they've bred, the female wants him off of her. And if he doesn't, they can get into a fight, and either one can get killed. Okay, even though the male is bigger than the female, it's not unheard of. So in the zoo, when they're doing it, sometimes we hear that on the news and we say, oh my God, what about the zoo? Did they do it right? No, they did it right. At the zoo, they're standing by with fire hoses and fire extinguishers to break the cats apart if they don't get separate and go into their own corners. So, but this occurs naturally. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does occasionally. Gestation, about 105 days. You can see the birth weight, anywhere from about 1.5 pounds to 3.5 pounds. Litter is typically 2 to 4. Now remember I said the male takes a territory and he covers several females? It works out in the birth ratio as well. On average, okay, you have 3.5 females born for every male. Normally, in most species, you see 50-50, male for a female. But in tigers, 3.5 to 1 is the ratio. About 50% of them die in their first 2 years, okay? I think I talked about development already, so I'm not going to cover that again. Interbirth interval, about 2 years. So she's kicked the kids out, and she's going to go several months, go back into estrus, start looking for a male, and then she'll give birth at about the 2-year point from her last birth. Maturity, females faster than males, as occurs in most species. And then life in the wild, typically mid-teens, in zoos 15 to 20 plus years, so it's not unheard of. The International Union for the Conservation of Nature classifies them as endangered, with some of the subspecies as critically endangered. Significant threats from human beings. Habitat loss from logging, mining, farming. Some of this is done illegally, even in areas that are supposed to be protected. That creates fragmentation and inbreeding problems, and I'm going to show you what some of those inbreeding problems look like momentarily. They get poached for their body parts, which are then exported around the world for fake cures. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. All animal body parts are made up of the exact same materials as human beings. They're just different shapes, colors, and forms, okay? Animal body parts cure nothing. Okay? Plants cure stuff, not animal body parts. We need to pay attention to what the herbivores eat to find cures for things. Part of their problem is limited law enforcement, where they are protected, and hunting of prey. When hunters go into their areas and take herbivores, the cats then get in trouble. They're looking for food, so they go down to the local farm and raid livestock, so the farmer gets mad and goes and finds the tiger. So it's an unending cycle, and their numbers have really shrunk. And you can see what some of these collection areas look like. Fragmentation, inbreeding. It's created a tiger that we call the golden tiger. It's not a subspecies. It's basically a result of genetic mutation. It inhibits coloration, and it causes flat face and cross-eyed. And this has occurred amongst Bengal tigers. 4 have been spotted in northern India in the wild, and there's about 30 in captivity. They're also known as the strawberry tiger. Where does the 30 in captivity? Remember I talked about commercial? Well, those in commercial are not being bred to save the species. They're being bred to basically for money, to provide cures. Sell their whiskers to cure toothaches, fat for leprosy and rheumatism, eyeballs for epilepsy, malaria, skin for fever, brains for lesion and pimples, and you can see, and so forth. In 1993, the Chinese, trying to help the situation, banned trade in tiger parts, and that gave rise to farm-raised tigers. And not only there, but here too, because the United States is one of the bigger buyers for this. And basically, tigers are kept in rather small cages. They don't have a habitat like you see at the zoo. They're literally just simply kept in the cage. You know, parents will breed with offspring, siblings will breed together, and they don't care. People that have them don't care. All they want to do is raise them, get them big, slaughter them, and then sell their body parts. And it's legal in a lot of states around this country. So you really want that number to be 0. But there's hope with help from all of us. Global Tiger Initiative was established in 2008, 13 countries that tigers were native to at that point, plus the World Bank, a number of conservation organizations, non-government organizations, came together to try to protect them, enact laws, set up reserves. One was established in Sumatra, the Combes National Park. AZA zoos like St. Louis help provide funding to support these. They have a lot of focus on breeding, so the tigers in the accredited zoos basically is like a Noah's Ark, so that these cats don't go extinct off the face of the earth. So they're survival colonies. So you definitely want to support our zoo. And in your everyday life, you can help these animals as well as others. You know, the forests are important to them, and humans cut down the forest many times illegally. If you're going to go buy napkins, towels, paper towels, toilet tissue, whatever, or paper for your copy, look for the Forest Stewardship symbol. This tree with the 3 letters FSC, Forest Stewardship Council. That tells you that the manufacturer is certified that they don't take the trees where the animals are endangered and only harvest trees in a sustainable fashion, so that they're replanting new trees and they're recycling and so forth. So that's what you can do to help, you know, here on the other side of the earth to help animals around the world. I gave you a picture here of a 6-month-old Amur cub at the St. Louis Zoo. And in this picture, you don't see mom in it, but he was play stalking his mother, which is exactly what he would do in the wild, learning how to hunt. Lions. Got 2 male lions here, and this is how lions greet each other, and it's part of bonding. Lions have historically had the largest habitat of any species on Earth other than human beings. There were 3 species of lions. In the green, you had the African lion, and they not only covered Africa, but they covered the Middle East all the way over to Asia. Then you had another species of lion that ranged from Europe across Asia and into what we now call Alaska and the Yukon Territory of Canada. And then the third species are known as the American lion, and they covered mainly the United States and Mexico. Now, they disappeared from the Americas about 13,000 years ago. And people were pretty good at overhunting even then. We had the Clovis people. There was about 1 million of them here in North America at the time. And they were pretty good about overhunting and did a job on them, so they disappeared. In Europe, they disappeared about 2,000 years ago. I guess the ancient Romans took care of that. And then by the 1900, they disappeared off of the northern part of Africa, most of the Middle East, and the rest of Asia. Their modern range in the lower map, the red box, which is sub-Saharan Africa, and then the little red X over there in India, the Gir Forest of India, which is right along the coast just south of the Pakistan border. They too have a broad tolerance for habitat, except they don't like rainforest and desert. Now, one quick slide on the American lion. Like I said, they went extinct about 13,000 years ago. They, based on bones, they were about 25% larger than the African lion. Large concentration, particularly in Southern California, around La Brea. They believed to not be named, and that's based on cave paintings that were found. And there was evidence that they lived and hunted in pairs, not in prides, as we see from African lions. Okay, let's go over to African lions, Panthera leo. 1950, 500,000 of them. Today, between 20 and 30,000, scientists believe the number is closer to about 20,000, and that there's 700 in Asia. Now, there's two subspecies. It's not African and Asian as we normally think. It's the northern subspecies, which are the cats in West and Central Africa and India, and then the southern subspecies from Eastern and Southern Africa. Now, one quick slide on the Gir Forest lion. As I mentioned before, northwest coast of India. They have a smaller mane than the African lion, and it's believed that's due to the hot climate in the region where they live. Up until the 19th century, they occupied Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, Pakistan, and West and Central India. In 1900, the Indian government decided to start a sanctuary, and they created the Gir Forest Sanctuary. At the time, there were only 20 lions there. In the 2010 census, the population was up to 500, and the 2020 census up to 670. So the Indian government tends to do a good job protecting animals when they do, and they've done the same excellent job with rhinoceros. There are a few outside of the sanctuary, but they typically get hunted. So the number overall is about 700. Okay. So let's talk about some notable physical characteristics of the African lion. They're the only big cat with a mane and tufted tail. And the mane basically is to protect the males in combat with each other, with their big claws and so forth. So you just can't get into that neck easily. But it also conveys the animal's age, fitness, and testosterone level, and provides females with the ability to recognize them at a distance. Is it a pride member or is it an outsider? If it's a pride member, fine, no problem. If it's an outsider and I've got cubs, I've got to get ready for a fight because he's going to be here to kill the cubs. Females tend to prefer males with dark manes, okay? And think about it, guys. When we were younger, we had a lot of hair on our head. It was dark, and the girls liked it. And then as we got older, we started losing hair, and it got light. And when you see the picture of one of the lions from St. Louis Zoo, he's an old guy, and he looks like us. He's lost a lot of his mane, and he's lost a lot of that darkness. So lions basically are built for the attack, not for running. They have massive limbs. Why didn't that advance? There we go. I'm sorry about that. It advanced on my screen, but it didn't advance on this screen. I don't know why that happened. One more. Here we go. I'm sorry about that. If that happens again, somebody raise your hand and say, hey, Len, look at the screen. So, coming back to the fact that you can see this guy, he's a young, very fit lion, high testosterone level with that dark mane. Males typically about 40% larger than females. Typically the male is going to weigh between 400 and 600 pounds, but they've been recorded as big as 800 pounds. But that's unusual. It's like, NBA basketball players that are 6'7", 6'6". Not a lot of us get that big, okay? between their size, their massive size, and that large mane, which is anywhere between 6 and 9 inches, it's really detrimental to the hunt, which is then why the females tend to do all the hunting. So they're the only, they're the only true social cat. About 80% live in prides, the other 20% are nomads. It's a matriarchal group. All the females in the pride are either full sisters or half sisters. Okay, usually have 3 to 10 adult females plus their young, and then 1 to 3 adult males who come and go every 2 or 3 years. Okay, if you've got a larger group of males, like 3 males, they may have a longer tenure of 3, slightly more years, but that's typically a 2 to 3 years. Their fundamental job is to protect the pride. As far as their behaviors, you'll see a lot of cheek rubbing, chins, foreheads, and that's part of greeting and bonding, as I showed you in the first picture. Male's job, patrol and defend the edge of their territory. The female, okay, is going to defend that core nail area where the young are. So they're going to scent market, same way a tiger did. You know, scat, urine, they're going to do scrapes and rub their scent. Now the pride also will announce their territory by roaring as a group, and that sound will carry even much further than an individual lion roaring. And that basically says, stay out of our territory, there's a lot of us here, so you'll be in for a big fight. Nomads tend to follow the migratory prey as they move around Africa following the rains. They prefer to avoid fights because there's only 1 or 2 of them, and fights are usually severe and oftentimes fatal. Intruder males, as I mentioned before, that stranger showing up is going to commit infanticide. And he does that because he wants the female to stop lactating, so she goes back into estrus and now will breed with him. So if he comes in, she'll fight very hard. Typically, though, the male overcomes her and kills the young and then drives off the subadult males and females. Now, fights within the pride are very short, and they're more like spats than true all-out fights. And that's basically competing for meat and for breeding. Lions are a lot like koalas. You know, when I was at the San Diego Zoo and I had the koalas, and people would say, why do they sleep so much? Why do you think lions sleep so much? And people were shocked that they both sleep or rest 20 to 21 hours a day and just kind of active very short periods of time, put all that energy out then to get their food. They cool by panting and by laying on their back, as you can see this handsome fellow doing. They hunt mostly at night. They prefer moonless nights and stormy conditions. Big cat, they make a lot of noise even though they're being stealthful because the prey are listening for every little sound. Females do 96% of the hunting, and then when they're about a year old, the young join in the hunt. Stalk and ambush, they gotta get in close because they can't run, while they run 35 miles an hour, they can't do it for a long distance, only about 100 to 200 yards. So it's a short burst of intense activity. Their success rate, slightly better than a tiger, 25 to 35%, and again, it's going to depend on the cover they have, how well they can sneak in and get in close. They're basically opportunistic. They're going to go after whatever they find, and they take about 40 different species of prey animals. They prefer medium to large herbivores. They're typically going to kill a large herbivore about once a week, and in between go after small ones. The male will eat about a quarter of his body weight. The females, remember I said they're in the hunting, so they do the hunt, kill, and they start gorging themselves. They won't let their young eat, believe it or not. They chase the young off. The male finally catches up to everything. He chases the females off, he eats, and he lets the young eat with him. So that's how they young, and that's what we have here. You can see the male with one of his cubs. Water is not essential. They're getting all their moisture from the carcass that they're consuming. The 90% of their diet comes from what they kill. The other 10% they either steal from other cats, like maybe leopards or cheetahs, or hyenas, or they scavenge that are out on the savannah. They'll breed year-round, and in the pride is synchronous breeding. All the sisters will go into estrus at the same time. They all want to breed at the same time. Okay, if it's just one male, for 4 or 5 nights, he's going to be a tired guy because he's got to go around to all of them. And then he winds up copulating with each of them 3 or 4 times an hour. Okay. What's unbelievable to me is this next statistic, conception rate is only 30% of the time. Unbelievable. I was just surprised when I first read that. Gestation rate slightly longer than the tiger at 110 days. When she's ready to give birth, she leaves the pride. She goes off by herself, and she's going to have her cubs by herself, and she's going to hide them. They're blind. They're not very, very mobile. They won't be fully mobile until they're about 4 weeks, sometimes as much as 8 weeks. Then she's going to return to the pride and sort of bring them into sort of a kindergarten environment where all the females will nurse each other's cubs. Okay? Each one has a litter of anywhere from 1 to 4. 6 is not unheard of. It's not very common. They weigh a little over 2 pounds. And I don't know if you can see this very well, but they are actually spotted when they're born. And you can see it a little bit on this one, right in this area here. And normally that fades away as they age, but sometimes you'll see some spotting on some adults. But that's common. They are dependent on life in the pride for a good 2 years, sometimes a little bit more, but by the time they're 2 years old, they're competent hunters. So the males are going to leave their pride area when they're 2 to 3 years of age. They'll form a bachelor pride, and initially they're going to be nomads. They got to wait for that mane to come in really full so that the females are interested in them, and that'll start developing at about the point they leave the pride. But they won't start breeding until they're about 5 years old and have a good-looking mane. Females leave the pride at the same time, about 2 to 3 years. They usually live in an area adjacent to their mothers. First pregnancy about 3.5 years. Females in the wild live to mid to late teens. Males not quite as long, early to mid-teens. IUCN status classifies them as endangered. Again, humans are the main predator. Competition for space. You get into problems with retaliation, preemptive killings. Farmer thinks they've slaughtered his livestock, or maybe they did. Or even if they haven't, he's going to go out there and get them before they get his goats. You get people trophy hunting like you see here. And also they go after their bodies as cures for folk medicine. And it's the same thing, it's a con game. They suffer also from habitat destruction, losing their forests and fragmentation, and they get into inbreeding problems as well. The problem with the farmers oftentimes starts out because hunters have taken all the prey in the areas that they would and sold that, to commercial bushmeat butchers to make money. So then the cat gets in trouble when it goes after domestic animals, and it also gets into trouble with domestic animals because they pick up diseases which they have no immunities for. Again, there's help. 3 reserves, reserves are established in 3 countries. You have South Africa, Kenya. Both countries are very big on protecting animals, and the Gir Forest in India. Populations on those reserves are increasing, so that's good news. Hunting bans are in place in a lot of countries, and they do put in sustainable practices where you can get a license to go hunt a lion, but you're restricted on the number, and basically you can only take an old lion. It's going to be past reproduction. Zoos provide a lot of support, helping to fund the sanctuaries and conservation programs, fund scientists and conservationists, provide education to locals. How do you live with these wild animals around you? And they support community-led programs to protect the animals, because the communities are interested also in protecting some of these animals. So definitely support our zoo. A few fun facts as I wrap up. Big cats have cubs, so when you see that little one, you say, is it a cub or is it a kitten? Big cats, remember, it's defined, lions, tigers, leopards, and jaguars, they have cubs. All the other cats have kittens. So we've got tiger cubs in the top picture, in the far corner picture there. That is a cheetah kitten, or kit it might be called. Amur tigers are bigger than lions, but lions as a species on average are bigger than tigers as a species on average. So it's always an argument, which are bigger, tigers or lions, okay? So as a species, it's lions, but as an individual cat, the Amur tiger is bigger. Roar can be heard from a tiger for about 2 miles, for a lion about 3 miles. Only Bengal tigers from India are white. They're not albino. They don't have pink eyes. You need to have pink eyes to be albino. They're white, and they have blue eyes, as you can see in this picture. There's only about 200 in captivity, and there's a lot of inbreeding going on there. They were last seen in the wild around 1950. Yes, there are white lions, very rare. This is a genetic anomaly. You can have one cub out of a litter is white. Their survival rate is very poor because they don't camouflage well in the wild. And it's basically a recessive mutant gene. You can see 2 cubs from the same litter in that bottom picture. We're starting to see maneless male lions. It's rare, but it's been seen to occur in northern Kenya and it's Tanzania. And it's part of climate change. A mane, okay, holds in the heat. So basically, this is a survival mechanism because you don't have the hair, you're not going to be quite as hot. But it gives you a problem if you get into a fight with another male lion. But this is occurring. At the St. Louis Zoo, we have 5 tigers. We have Max, who's 12 years old, and Rika, she's 10. Rika's name means river in Russian. And then the 3 cubs that she had last November, now 10 months old, are named for 3 rivers in the area where the species comes from. Sungari and Usari are males, and Daria is a female. We have 2 lions, Nguzi. I have a picture here, and you can see he's lost a lot of his dark mane. This picture's a couple of years old. He actually has a little less hair than you see here now. Cabrera, the female's a little older at 19. And they've had 2 litters together at the St. Louis Zoo. My favorite read when it comes to lions is The Serengeti Lion by Dr. George Schuller. It's based on a 3-year field study, and it was the winner of a National Book Award. So I highly recommend this. You'll find out a lot about not just lions, but other African animals in the book. So again, thank you for listening. Do we have questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you feed the lions here in the zoo?
Thankfully, I don't have to do that. The question was, how do we feed them at the zoo? Basically, the cats, although the cats like to be out at night, so they stay out at night in their habitat. And then when the keepers come in the morning, okay, they bring the cats in, and then they go out into the habitat, clean up from the day before, and then they'll put food out. They'll get some food back in the back area, but then food also out in the exhibit area.
What kinds of food?
It varies. They will, the diets for the animals are set by a PhD degree nutritionist that is on Zoo's full-time staff. And she not only does it by species, sometimes animals based on age, based on health condition, she actually adjusts, okay? Just like your doctor might tell you to adjust your diet. They'll give them a variety of different things, different types of ground meat, cow shank, maybe half a lamb, goat carcass, maybe dead rabbit, a cow femur bone with meat on it, a rack of ribs. So they try to mix it up because the animals get different things to eat, and they do it in different quantities. You don't get the same thing, same quantity every day either. In the wild, oftentimes they don't eat every day, okay? But at the zoos, they always get to eat every day. It's just the quantity will vary, so it varies up like it is in the wild. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Do some of these cats, different cats, live in the same environment in the wild? And do they get along?
Some of the cats do. For instance, the Amur tiger lives with the Amur leopard. The Amur tiger, he's a 700-pound, gorilla in his area, and the Amur leopard is about 125, 135 pounds. Amur leopard stays away from the Amur tiger. Okay, he's prey to as far as the tiger is concerned. So he's going to be careful of that. Sometimes with jaguars and puma or cougars, they'll coexist in the same territory with each other. The jaguar going after the larger game in the territory and the puma going after the smaller game. So they don't conflict as much. So it varies depending on species. Yes, ma'am.
When we were in Botswana on a safari, we saw lions, and we were as close as I am to you. We were told never to stand up, never to shout. We could just point our cameras, and we must have stayed there 10 or 15 minutes. One got up to move and went to a water spot and drank, but it was amazing.
Absolutely. So you're a braver soul than me. You don't want to startle them. Thankfully, he probably had fed recently.
Well, they see them every day, and the Jeep sits there, and they know it's going to leave.
But you got to remember, they are still wild animals. Even the ones in the zoo here, they're wild animals. So the keepers have to always keep, the bars, the grading between them and the animal. Even though they respond to the keepers, they respond to their name, and they act almost like pets. If they get startled, when an animal gets scared, it just automatically reacts out of instinct. And so they are wild.
In Botswana, they didn't carry guns. In South Africa, on the thing, they carried guns. But the ones in Botswana carried a very loud thing that they could set off. It was interesting.
Well, that's good to hear that they did that, because I always hate to find out, somebody's on a camera safari and an animal gets killed because they acted instinctually. So that's a great idea. Anybody else? Any questions? Well, our next talk and our next immersion is going to be on Monday, October 21st. I'm going to continue with big cats. We're going to, the next time we meet, talk about Amur leopards, which is the rarest cat in the world, the rarest big cat in the world. Only about 100 of these left alive in the wild. They don't come from Africa, so you'll have to come to find out where they do come from. And then the snow leopard, known as the ghost cat of the Himalayas, to me the most beautiful cat in the world, and we'll talk about them. So everybody have a wonderful week, and again, thank you for coming.
I know everybody is really grateful that you do a fabulous job. I don't know how you amassed all this information, aside from your career. It's amazing. Thank you so much.